Welcome back, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Today we have another exciting video. We are going over all of the free agency moves, what they mean, and how I, along with the market, is valuing them in Dynasty at the moment. I have some thoughts on if you should be buying or even selling at these prices, or if you just should play the waiting game, see what teams do after the NFL draft, and wait for these prices to fall a little bit. A lot of the time, people can get caught up in the hype and buy these players at their peak price. Well, I think there are times to do this. It is a, pretty rare occasion. Most of the time we should let the market settle and just buy a little bit later. Either way, this is going to be a super fun video full of crazy moves that shook up the entire ecosystem of Dynasty. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it. No surprise here, starting it off with the biggest free agency move by far of the offseason, and that is Kenneth Walker to the Chiefs. This was shocking to me that the Seahawks let him walk after the Zach Charbonnet ACL injury in the playoffs, and after Kenneth Walker won Super Bowl MVP. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. I understand not wanting to pay running backs on a hefty contract, but it felt like a reasonable price to bring him back on. He ended up signing a 3-year, $45 million contract with about $28 million guaranteed. This move is exciting for a ton of reasons. Clearly, the first reason we could see Kenneth Walker in a backfield that doesn't involve Zach Charbonnet taking away valuable snaps, vulturing touchdowns. He's finally going to be the lead clear back ever since we kind of saw him break out in his rookie season, and he gets to play next to Patrick Mahomes once he gets back from his ACL injury. He's also almost certainly going to be taken, and I believe he is being taken in the second round of redraft leagues right now, especially on Underdog, and has already shot up to the RB9 of trade cut. I have him a spot higher at RB8, just behind James Cook, and a spot behind Jonathan Taylor. I would also not be shocked if he rises even higher when it's all said and done, especially in my rankings, and especially, probably even more in consensus rankings. The price to acquire him via rookie pick sits around the 103 to 104, and similarly valued players are names like Nico Collins, Garrett Wilson, and Jordan Love. So yeah, he is pretty incredibly expensive and rightfully should be. His role in the Chiefs offense and playing in an Andy Reid offense definitely warrants the price tag. I'm not going to lie. The build on your dynasty team is probably going to heavily contribute to whether or not you go after Walker at this price. Personally, if I'm rebuilding, I am selling. I'm trying to get the 103, 104, maybe another late round pick, an early second round pick. The players that will be there at those picks are just too good to pass up, in my opinion. I would rather take, a shot at one of the top two wide receivers. They could make two of them make it, maybe could even go top 10, or even Fernando Mendoza if you're really high on him. They're assets that I feel just a little more insulated, and it would just be better positioned to maybe help your team make a run once you come out of that rebuild, whether it be 2027, 2028. I also want to mention that I don't blame the people who want to hold him. I really don't. If you're 1 year away and think Walker can help your team in 2027, go for it. I just think it's a little riskier than I would like to, it's just a little riskier than I would like to do, especially if I'm rebuilding. And yeah, that's just kind of how I see it. But I totally get the people who want to hold. If I am competing, however, I do think that I would trade away Garrett Wilson, Nico Collins, if you're stacked a wide receiver and in need of a running back. And I get it. I know these are high ranked assets at the wide receiver position, but Kenneth Walker is one of the few running backs that, in my opinion, I believe could finish as the number one running back overall, have 20 plus point per game upside. I think he's that kind of guy. I would not be surprised if he puts up numbers like a Gibbs or Bijan this next season. I know it's not as big of a chance as, I know it's not it's not as baked in, and I know Patrick Mahomes is going to miss the first couple of games, but the talent is out of this world. The opportunity plus the offensive infrastructure once Mahomes gets in that offense is finally going to be there for him to do this. No more Charbonnet, no more split backfield BS. He gets in, have Andy Reid as his play caller. They're going to be super creative with him, trying to get the ball in his hands in any way possible. And yeah, Patrick Mahomes, I can say this over and over again. It's going to be his quarterback, and you just love that quarterback upgrade over someone like Sam Darnold. No diss to him. I know he just won a Super Bowl, but he's not Patrick Mahomes. It does not get a lot better than that, in my opinion. I'm going to keep saying it. So, this entire offseason. So I think people are going to maybe get tired of it. But yeah, Patrick Mahomes is awesome. And yeah, Kenneth Walker, that's a plus for him. I think the signing helps everyone in the Chiefs offense, to be honest with you, and it will open things up for Mahomes to hopefully regain the vertical element of his game, maybe with Xavier Worthy, and clear out room for Rashee Rice, assuming that he plays. I know he's got a lot of legal troubles right now, and other pass catchers, whether they take one in the second round, third round, whatever. Just an all-around win for everyone in fantasy as well. A dream spot that we are going to see, or at least that we never maybe even thought we were going to get to see, especially thinking that Seahawks may try to retain him, franchise tag him, whatever. Walker in Kansas City should be a lot of fun. We had another big mover at the running back position. Travis Etienne signs with the Saints on a 4-year deal worth $52 million, with between 24 to 28 of that being guaranteed. So about on par with Kenneth Walker in terms of that guaranteed money. A lot of the time people see these deals and there's a lot of context that is missing. Essentially, how I'll break it down is this is basically a 2-year deal. The Saints have a potential to get out after the 2027 season and not have to eat any of the extra money. This is incredibly important because people see 4 years, they assume the contract is at length. Most of the time, that isn't the case, especially in the NFL. I know in basketball and baseball, a lot of those contracts are guaranteed. And, the NFL, a lot of the time, the contracts have out in the second or third year. So that is a lot of context that is missing. And I think a lot of people, especially dynasty managers, especially if they're looking down the road, should be able to kind of pinpoint these things and make some down the road decisions if that may be the case. So yeah, it's good to get a little extra clarity on exactly what these contracts mean. All that aside, though, ETN has jumped up to my running back 17 and his keep trade cuts RB 18. I also really love this deal for not only ETN but for the Saints as well. They add another explosive weapon in this offense to take pressure off of the young Tyler Shuck, or I should say not young, he's like 25, 26, but second year Tyler Shuck. No disrespect to how great Alvin Kamara has been, but he will be 31 before the season starts. He's been plagued by injury and, clearly is not the same player. Also, I get it. Leaving a Liam Cohen offense hurts, but having Kellen Moore as, a backup option and stepping into a Kellen Moore offense is, I believe, not a big step down that much. The Saints offensive line is also one of the more promising and up-and-coming units in the NFL. They have two great young tackles on both sides and can add to it with the 8th overall pick. I just love all the surrounding pieces and what Kellen Moore is building in New Orleans. ETN will be heavily used in the receiving game. We all know that. He will get pretty much all the opportunities in that role, kind of like he did with the Jaguars last year. His value in terms of rookie picks is anywhere between the 107 and the 109, and is valued similar to guys like Zay Flowers, Jalen Waddle, Jared Goff. I would almost certainly trade the 108 or 109 for ETN, especially if I'm competing. I would likely maybe wait till after the NFL draft just in case the Saints don't surprise us all and take Jeremiah Love with the first round pick or their 8th overall pick. It is something that I think could happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's a smart move, but I think it still could happen. So I just want to throw that out there. I am reluctant, though, to trade away a guy like Zay Flowers because of his upside if he can, finally find the end zone, but don't mind parting with him if I need a running back and if I am, well suited in that part of my team. Same thing can be said for Jalen Waddle. He was actually just traded to the Broncos this week, and I think his upside is enticing with Sean Payton and Bo Nix. To really sum up my thoughts, though, if you trade for him now, I think there are still some risks out there. So I don't want to, just say that the Saints will absolutely not take Jeremiah Love. I think the selection of Jeremiah Love could change things a lot. I don't think they'll do it, but it's just something that I think you should keep in the back of your mind if you're trying to trade for him. I can't blame people who want to pull the trigger on this price. He could get even more expensive once we see that the Saints don't take Love, then once they don't take, anyone at that position in the NFL draft in the first couple of rounds, and we get closer to the NFL season and fantasy managers are looking for points to add at the running back spot. ETN does have a lot of inflation though, and the offense he is stepping into has a lot of opportunity and promise. So I can't argue with people who want to go and get him right now. And also you cannot argue with that guaranteed money. Maybe the biggest mover at the wide receiver position, Mike Evans signed a 3-year deal worth $42 million with the San Francisco 49ers. About 16 of that is guaranteed. This contract is a little trickier in my opinion. The 49ers have an out after this season, so this could be potentially a 1-year stint. Either way, I do love this signing for all parties. It is so much fun for fantasy football and kind of shifts things in a pretty big way. I think Mike Evans drops right in the conversation of a mid to high end wide receiver 2 in fantasy for 2026. This reminds me a lot of exactly what the Rams did last year with Devontae Adams. He will likely be the number 1 receiving option and pushes Ricky Pearsall to that clear number 2 role, maybe even the number 3 once George Kittle returns. We also know they have McCaffrey there, so it might be a little trickier for Ricky Pearsall to really break out this next season, especially if Evans is able to stay healthy. We'll talk about that here in a second. But at his price of anywhere between the 201 and the 203, give me Mike Evans on a competing roster all day long. We already know how valuable the players are in a 49ers offense can be. And I think Evans has a chance to really put up one more big season before he eventually retires. I know he's getting up there in age. I am also trading away any of the guys valued around him. I think it's crazy. David Montgomery, Chuba Hubbard, Mason Taylor, Quentin Johnson. It's hard to match the value that he could potentially bring you in just one season in this offense. Call me crazy, but I have him, as you can see, all the way up at wide receiver 36 in my Dynasty rankings, just based on the value that he could return in just 1 year. I know he's a little bit older, so if you prefer a lot of the younger guys behind him, I totally get it. This is a big difference to where Keep Your Cut has him, and they have him around wide receiver 50. I already know that Mike Evans is probably going to be one of my biggest buys of the offseason. His price mixed with the upside that he has in this offense gives me a ton of confidence that he's going to return that value if he is able to stay healthy. Well, I do understand the concerns about his age. I get it. I think he's around 32 years old. He's going to turn 33 this upcoming year, but I know there's also that stuff with the 49ers facility, that conspiracy. And whatever injuries on top of that, he's already had an injury history of his own, especially soft tissue one. So I totally get the risk there, but I think the reward is really good for this price. All of that, like I said, is incredibly valid. But I just landed in the camp of, the price eliminating that risk entirely. We are in the business of winning championships in Dynasty, and Mike Evans helps you do that for at least one season. Expect things to look similar to how Devontae Adams performed with the Rams last year, especially, like I said, if he is able to stay healthy. Let's talk about the quarterback position because Malik Willis landed himself a 3-year deal with the Dolphins worth $67.5 million, 45 of that being guaranteed. So a really nice payday for someone who has only started a handful of games in the NFL. This deal, though, is essentially for 2 years, with most of that money coming in those first 2 seasons. At first, I was super high on the signing and actually predicted it in my free agent video a couple of weeks ago. The Green Bay guy coming over, the defensive coordinator coming over, worked directly with Malik Willis, the player personnel guy, became the GM for the Miami Dolphins. So I just felt it was a pretty good fit. They knew Malik Willis, and yeah, it turns out that happened. I knew the Dolphins, though, probably weren't going to be a very good football team going into 2026, but having Devon Achane, Jalen Waddle as weapons felt good enough, especially with the rushing upside with the Malik Willis brings with his feet. I feel a lot different now, especially with the Dolphins trading away Jalen Waddle earlier this week. Sure, they got an extra first and third round pick to kind of add for skill positions, but realistically, though, whatever player that they choose at that spot, considering they actually use that first round pick on a skill position player, they likely will not return the same type of value or production that Jalen Waddle would, and it worries me for Willis. He is left with Tutu Atwell, Malik Washington, Theo Weiss as his best receiving options. And if the Dolphins decide to move on from Devon Achane, because there's a lot of chatter right now that teams are calling about Devon Achane, and they said they're not trading him, but you never know. Things could get ugly really, really quick. I will be upfront and let you know that I don't think you should be trading first round pick value or the first round pick value that Malik Willis is going for at the moment. I would just much rather go with a potentially cheaper option or equivalently valued options like Matthew Stafford, MVP from last season. We know he's going to be a great offense, or even go to the direction of adding a small piece to go get a Jared Goff. I see cross positional targets that I love as well. Jalen Waddles, Zay Flowers, Josh Jacobs, all much more valuable and safe names. If you hadn't already noticed, I am very worried about what this offense looks around Malik Willis. As much as I love the rushing upside, I think it could pretty much be closer to a Justin Fields situation from last year. And I think that that's probably something that a lot of people need to admit at this point. I want to be all in on Willis, but dude, this Dolphins offense, this Dolphins team is not going to be good. They're going to be awful. And with the departure of Jalen Waddle, I am just very, very worried about him making out of this season as a starter. This could be really, really bad. And Miami could end up just taking his replacement in the 2027 NFL draft, especially if they own a top pick. It's looking like that roster is terrible all around. With that risk, I would just much rather cash out on his value spike. And if I'm wrong, then I am wrong. A much more promising mover at the quarterback position was Kyler Murray signing a veteran minimum deal with the Minnesota Vikings. Unlike Malik Willis, Kyler steps into an offense that is led by one of the better offensive minds in the NFL, includes receiving options like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. I really don't have to say much more there. Kyler currently finds himself as the keep trade cut consensus quarterback 25. I think he continues to rise as the offseason goes along. He is currently my quarterback 19, and that is kind of where I expect him to end up at the end of the day, or at least close to the beginning of the season. The reason for this is because he will almost certainly be the Vikings quarterback going into the 2026 season. JJ McCarthy was historically bad last year, and Minnesota was clearly not ready to go through that again. This is an A-plus signing for fantasy football. All parties pretty much benefited from that, or at least will benefit from this, in my opinion. This will revive the value of the Vikings receiving weapons, and especially Justin Jefferson. I think Kyler has the opportunity to completely turn the tables on how people view him around the league. If he does his job in this offense and the Vikings have a good year, I would expect them to, have them keep him there long term. The Vikings let Sam Darnold walk after a similar situation, and I don't think they'd let that happen again, especially after seeing what he did this past year. He won a Super Bowl in Seattle. I think if that happens, Kyler has a chance to spike in value more than anybody else on this list. His rushing upside mixed with the weapons at his disposal in this offense gives me so much confidence in this actually working. I know a lot of people may be skeptical, but if you can land Kyler for a late first round pick, I am doing it. His value at that price combined with the offense that he is in makes me want to buy him regardless of the risk. I see a bunch of names valued in the same range that I would not mind dealing for him. Isaiah Likely, DJ Moore, Alec Pierce. See you later. Big upside quarterback value at this price is hard to find. And I think grabbing him right now is really, really smart. He could absolutely rise even more, and I would just rather not pay that tax. go grab Kyler now. And maybe you can even get him cheaper for, than anything that I have listed here. Just don't knock it till you try it. Go kick the tires. This is a huge win for all the pieces in Minnesota and especially Kyler Murray. I am banking on him bringing back our king, Justin Jefferson, back from the dead in 2026. Not as exciting as Travis Etienne or Kenneth Walker, but Tyler Algier was a big riser coming out of free agency at the running back position. He signed with the Cardinals, though, and I think that is kind of where the excitement comes to an end, at least for me. It wasn't a super lucrative contract either. He is going to get about $12 million over the next 2 seasons. Nothing crazy, but enough to, probably be the lead back in Arizona for at least the 2026 season. It's fair to point out that there were rumors of the Cardinals taking Jeremiah Love at number 3 overall. They technically still could do that, like I mentioned with the Saints and ETN. I just think it's less likely now after Algier signing, and they restructured James Conner's deal so that he could stay with the team. They also have Trey Benson, who they drafted in the second round, I believe, a couple of years ago, who Algier pretty much just sent to the Shadow Realm. Anyways, he moved up to my running back 31, and he has keep trade cuts RB 27. He is valued around players like Brenton Strange, Matthew Golden, and DeAndre Swift, and is going for rookie picks around the 201 to the 203 range. I'm a little bit lower than consensus on Algier just purely on the situation and his lack of receiving upside. He is not involved much at all in that sense, and I think that role is probably going to be split up between James Conner and Trey Benson. On top of it, like I just alluded to, this team in general, and especially the offense, is probably going to be most likely atrocious. The Cardinals will battle for the number 1 overall pick in 2027. I'm almost sure of it. You never know, but I think it's, especially with a new coach coming in, I think it's likely that they, are going to probably end up with a top 3 to top 5 pick. And they will probably be playing from behind most of the time. This also doesn't help Algier's case because he's probably going to be used as an early down grinder, and he is maximized around the goal line. This environment isn't going to give him many chances to kind of do that. This Cardinals offense is going to be led by Jacoby Brissett or Gardner Minshew, one or the other. I'm not gonna sit here and trash the Cardinals anymore. So because that really doesn't help anybody. I just want to stress the downside of Algier. The offense isn't going to provide many opportunities to score, and he's just not going to catch passes. If he's not going to catch passes or be a factor in the receiving game, he just isn't intriguing to me. I like the player. I do. You just can't justify, I just can't justify telling you guys to go spend early second round picks on him. I feel much better by going to get someone who has a similar role and plays on a much better football team. Because how about David Montgomery? At least one of the Texans, they added a lot on the offensive line. We know they're going to be a better football team. They're going to be playing, not going to be playing from behind as much, and they want to run the ball. That is a big part of their identity. Blake Corum, Ramondre Stevenson, Jalen Warren, and J.K. Dobbins all interest me more and are ranked multiple spots behind Algier. Just don't get caught up in the potential of opportunity or the opportunity that Algier will get. This offense is going to be one of the worst in the NFL. And if he doesn't have the skill set that a guy like this can overcome in a situation, the receiving skill set, I just don't think that he is worth it at this price. If you can down tier 2 players at the same position and get something else on top, some of the guys I just mentioned, I think that is a huge win. There are so many different directions that you can go to move off of him, especially if you held him until after free agency. Let someone else fall for this trap. Just don't let it be you. Maybe the most obvious signing of free agency was Wan'Dale Robinson to the Titans, and boy, oh boy, did he get a bag. The Titans gave Robinson a 4-year, $78 million contract, $38 million in total guarantees, and if you look at the details, it is essentially kind of a 2-year deal. They could keep him in year 3, year 4, but you never know. Based on the cap value, he probably is going to return. I doubt that they keep him, but 2-year deal, getting paid good money. And yeah, he lands as my wide receiver 42 and is consensusly ranked on Keep Shortcut as the, wide receiver 34, 35, 36, going for around the 111 to 201 in rookie pick value, and is hovering around similar guys like Zach Charbonnet, Derrick Henry, George Kittle. I am kind of a little indifferent when it comes to Wan'Dale's price. I think there's a valid case to be made on both sides. There's no doubt that he is incredibly boring. He will probably catch around 90 passes though in Tennessee. He will probably be around the 800, 900,000 yard receiving mark. He won't find the end zone a ton either. He'll probably hover around the 11 to 14 point per game area. I'm not trying to knock him, but his biggest weakness is probably his lack of a true ceiling. We really haven't seen it. He's have a couple of spike weeks, but other than that, there isn't a ton to dream on. Sometimes though, that's okay. And that is exactly why I can see both sides of the argument. There's a world where he does exactly what he did last year, average around 14 points per game, 13 points per game. He'll be the PPR scam that we all love. That is perfectly fine to have as a wide receiver 4 or flex option. I just don't think he has the most upside in the world. I don't think you should be having him or, plugging him in as your wide receiver 2 or 3. If you held Wandale, I do not mind continuing to hold him. Assuming the Titans don't take a wide receiver at number 4 overall, I think all signs point to possibly them taking Jeremiah Love. I think he probably operates as the number 1 for Cam Ward in 2026. There are worse buys out there if that is what you want to do. I think if you're looking to sell Wandale, the time is now, though. Capitalize off the hype, him signing that big deal in Tennessee. People might dream on a ceiling that just is not likely there. It's just not what his skill sets are made for. This is why when I see him valued around guys like Derrick Henry or a couple of spots away from Rachel Tootin, who likely is going to lead the Jags backfield with ETN leaving, I get really excited and want to move off of him for that price. Even a late first is an asset that I would just much rather have. These are the perfect windows to capitalize on peak values for guys like Wan'Dale Robinson. Overall, though, I think you can make an argument, any way you spin it. Just don't be fooled by what Wandale is. His ceiling is limited, and that's just the truth. Moving over to Romeo Doubs. He landed himself also a really, really nice payday coming over to the Patriots, and he's going to be catching passes from Drake May. It feels like Dobbs has been pretty much disrespected his entire career. He's been stuck in that messy receiving room with the Green Bay receiving guys. And he's arguably probably been the most consistent one of the three to the four that were there between like Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, now Matthew Golden last year. He isn't the most talented player in the world, but he is definitely reliable. He got a 4-year deal worth $68 million. I believe it's up to $80 million if he hits some incentives, but he jumped all the way up to wide receiver 33 on Keep Your Cut, which to me feels incredibly too high. I feel like I'm one of the more bullish people on Dobbs. I just can't push him any higher than like wide receiver 45 to 48, and maybe that's too low. My whole argument would be that I don't think the Patriots are done adding to this wide receiver room. There have been a flood of rumors of them trading for AJ Brown, and I think there's a good possibility that they even go wide receiver at pick 31 or in the second or third round. Even if they do add AJ Brown, if that happens, it significantly caps any theoretical upside that Dobbs had. I also think that, the price tag anywhere between the 112 to 202 is too good to pass up for a guy like Dobbs, like we mentioned, who just doesn't have the biggest upside or ceiling. Sure, this draft class isn't the deepest, but I think there are going to be a player or two that fall into that range that you're going to like. I would just much rather take the stab on that asset with more upside. Nothing against Dobbs. He's a solid player that deserved a role and deserved a nice payday. Maybe it deserved a nice upgrade in that role. I am just not a believer in the type of value that he is going to return at that price at the moment. Go move Dobbs for a late first or an early second. Shoot, I'm not a huge fan of these players, but similarly valued guys like Parker Washington, Christian Watson have way, way more theoretical upside. They have way bigger ceiling. They've shown a way bigger ceiling. I would just rather go that route for that price. No diss to Dobbs. Maybe the biggest winner of all the free agent tight ends is Isaiah Likely, who signed a 3-year, $40 million deal with the New York Giants. He will now be catching passes from Jackson Dart and reunites with his head coach in Baltimore, Jim Harbaugh. I love this move for Likely, Jackson Dart, and the overall offense for the Giants. Likely is labeled as a tight end. Really, though, he is like of the Adirondé Gadsons of the world, more of a glorified wide receiver. He isn't going to be on the field all the time because of his limitations as a blocker. This is my only worry when it comes to him. Can Likely be efficient enough with his targets when he is out there? And can the Giants be good enough on offense to help him sustain that over the course of the season? I'm just not entirely sure, but I think the talent is there and the upside is there. I thought it was going to be happy to go out of the market and look to buy Likely. That was, of course, until I saw the price that he was going for on the open market. Even though me and the community seem to be pretty much even when it comes to where he is ranked, I have him as tight end 11. The community has him as tight end 11 as well. I just don't agree with the rookie pick price tag of a late first or even the players that are valued around him. Like, seriously, Bashal Tootin, Kyler Murray, Jordan Addison, a wide receiver. I am cashing out on that all day long. I do tend to rank tight ends lower, I'll be honest with you, regardless of a premium. And that's just because I would just rather get points from that position much, much cheaper. Positional value is important to me, and I would just rather have players or move guys like this for players that are higher upside, running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers. This is an example of capitalizing on a window to move a player at an all-time high value. Go get a more safe asset at a more important position. I love Isaiah Likely in New York, and I think that he could potentially return top 6 to 8 value, maybe even top 5 value at the position. I just don't think the risk is worth it, especially with all the phenomenal players going around him. Cash out on Isaiah Likely and reap the benefits during the season. The second of the two tight end movers that was really interesting to me was Chika Okonkwo to the Commanders. He signed a 3-year deal with 30 million. Over half of that is guaranteed, and he will step in as likely the number 2 receiving option behind Terry McLaurin on this team at the very moment. I love this signing once again. We only got to see a glimpse of what he could do in Tennessee, and I think that there's a lot of juice left to squeeze in his game. He is another one of those move tight ends that is deployed more as a wide receiver than a true tight end, similar to Gadsden. But I'm a big fan of Jaden Daniels as well. He is one of the more exciting quarterbacks in the league, so it was nice to see Washington go out and get him another weapon. I do think that Okonkwo could bump down as the number 3 option if they went out and took a wide receiver at the number 7 overall pick. I think that it's very, very likely that they could do that. Even I still think he could be, I think he could still have incredible value in fantasy, especially at the price that he's going around. He is still just 26 years old. And the best thing about him, like I mentioned, his price is great compared to someone like Isaiah Likely, who's going for late first rounders, which to me is kind of wild. Okonkwo is valued around the tight end 22 on Keep Trade Cut and is actually my tight end 18. I think his value has some time to catch up, especially if the Commanders go a different direction than we, maybe thought they would go at number 7 overall. I know a lot of people have been mocking Jeremiah Love. A lot of people have been mocking Kyle Lemon or Carnell Tate. So if they go in a different direction, I think that Okonkwo can be an even better buy than he is right now. I think, he's going anywhere between the 204 to the 206, and the players that are going around him are like Jalen Coker, Rashid Shaheed, and J.K. Dobbins. I'm more than happy to pay all of those prices. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is what I am talking about when I mean grabbing tight end in other places at cheaper prices. You can get an equally good tight end for a much cheaper price in a much better offense and not have to part with late first rounders or more highly valued assets. It's a smarter way to go in my eyes. Also, if you're looking for a more under the radar tight end that could possibly, like I said, with likely return top 5 to 8 value at the position, I would go, the route of a Okonkwo. We saw what Zach Ertz did like in Jaden Daniels' rookie season at 35, 36 years old. So yeah, I think that the upside is out of this world with Okonkwo. He is he is in an exciting offense with a promising young quarterback. I think this unit projects to be at least top 12 at the very worst and probably better with a healthy Jaden Daniels. And yeah, he's just a much, much cheaper price. Go kick the tires on Chig Okonkwo and send one of those mid-second round picks to plug him into your lineup for 2026. We're going to go relatively quickly here on this next one because I think the guy that signed here was a bigger name, but just a little bit less significant because of the amount of money that he actually ended up getting. And that is Rachaad White, who signed with the Commanders. I actually happened to see this one coming. I predicted it in my video just because if he played with Jaden Daniels in college, it was kind of a little bit easier to connect the dots. What I didn't see coming, though, was the lack of money that he got. He got $2 million, which was about as close to minimum as possible. And maybe I'm looking too much into it, but this is a pretty bearish look to me. I know that Javonte Williams got like a 3-year deal last year, broke out for the Cowboys. Rachaad White is a guy that has been relevant in fantasy before, so I think it's possible that he kind of does something similar, but I just don't think he's nearly as good as Javonte Williams or was as good as Javonte Williams kind of going into last year, or at least prospect-wise. And maybe that doesn't matter, but anyways, I'm rambling too much. I apologize for everyone for mentioning him so much throughout this video, but I think that Jeremiah Love is absolutely in play at number 7 overall, and that is exactly why I kind of want to be quick on this. I think it comes down to the Titans at 4 and the Commanders at 7, maybe even the Giants at 5. But if the Commanders take Love at 7, I think my thoughts about this signing were correct, and he will purely just be a situational third down back that mixes in at times. Even if they pass on Love, I think that White's role still stays relatively the same. He won't get a ton of carries and will primarily be a third down back with Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt taking the early down work. We all know Jaden Daniels, of course, likes to scramble, so White won't benefit from a quarterback checking down when he actually is on the field. He won't get those like kind of cheap points. This caps his upside overall, and with the lack of money that he was paid, I just don't think it is worth it. I don't think he's worth a ton. At the moment, though, White is valued around the RB43 on Keep Trade Cut, and he's actually my RB41. I'm a little bit higher on consensus, which is weird, honestly, but I think he probably is going to rise a little bit. I just don't have a vision for him, based on all the factors I just laid out. Honestly, kind of think that Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt's a better running back in my opinion. A signing I was excited about, but it just didn't happen like I thought it would. Reuniting White with Jaden Daniels is cool, but that's just about where it ends. I want to quickly touch on some players who actually ended up signing deals to return to their original teams or were franchise tagged. In the case of Breece Hall, speaking of him, let's start there because Breece had the non-exclusive franchise tag placed on him, which basically means that while he can negotiate with other teams about a potential deal, it will never come to fruition most likely because whatever team were to sign him has to pay the Jets 2 first-round picks. So yeah, it looks like he will not be getting he will actually not be with another team at least anytime soon or another year. He will probably look to sign a long-term deal in New York or become a free agent next year, most likely. The torture of Breece Hall continues, and he indeed will not get a Kenneth Walker treatment, like I just mentioned, or get to test the market. Javonte Williams, on the other hand, was a guy I was excited to see stay home in Dallas. He revived his career in 2025 and was rewarded handsomely with a 3-year deal worth up to $24 million, about $8 million a year. I imagine he is in Dallas the next 2 seasons based on the details of the contract, and I kind of love it for all parties. I think it worked out great. He was great in the scheme and gave the Cowboys a reliable option on the ground. He is also still only 25 years old, and I imagine his role being great for fantasy as long as at least he is able to stay healthy in this offense. The other two notable returners are J.K. Dobbins, who signed for 2 years and $20 million, and Aaron Jones, who came back to the Vikings on a 1-year deal that is just south of $6 million. One of these, I think, means a whole heck of a lot more than the other, at least at the moment. I think J.K. Dobbins has a similar role to what he did last year in Denver, the early down grounder that will average anywhere between 10 to 12 points per game. R.J. Harvey, of course, will mix in and handle the receiving work. Not much looks to have changed there. Aaron Jones, the less sexy one, he is 31 years old. And I think there's a good chance that Minnesota takes a running back in one of the first 4 rounds. They need a complement to Aaron Jones, and specifically one that can bring a lot more juice to this offense. If you held any of these guys, I imagine both of them kind of having good value points, especially at the beginning of the season. I'm definitely way more interested in Dobbins more than Jones, though, just basically based on where they are in their careers, the money they were given, and also the roles that they played in their respective offenses. Let's now shed some light on some of the bigger name wide receivers who returned to their teams. First up, Alec Pierce. He got a big payday to return to the Colts on a 4-year, $116 million contract. Absolutely insane money to be handing out to him, and that's no disrespect to Alec Pierce. I think he's a good player, but I think it's a bit of an overpay. This actually led to the Colts moving off of Michael Pittman Jr., off of his contract, trading him to the Steelers for a late round pick swap. I think Pierce's role definitely grows now. Those targets have to go somewhere, and I think that they will, a handful of those will just go to him based off the contract that he was given. I think they may try to feed him early on in the season to see what he can do, see what that ceiling looks like there. I'm just very hesitant to believe that he has actually got the ability to be a big time target earner. We've just never seen it in his first 3 years. So if it didn't happen then, I don't know if it's going to happen now. That's just something that I think also is going to be a big discussion leading up to the beginning of the season. Honestly, I think, in my opinion, I think a lot of those targets go to Josh Downs. I think he gets a bigger role now. Josh Downs is a really good player, just been in the slot. He's been taken off the field a lot because of his lack of ability to block. And also Tyler Warren, who was picked 13th overall last year, had a really good rookie season. But also, I'll put that aside for now. That is a discussion for another time, one we will have a lot this offseason. However you feel, it's worth at least moving him up a couple of spots just based on the contract and the potential opportunity that was left by Michael Pittman. We already knew this one was going to happen, but George Pickens was franchise tag or had the tag placed on him. He will look to get a long-term deal done in Dallas, and I think that's probably where he ends up. I predict that's where he ends up. He played really, really well in Dallas. He really hasn't moved for me at all. He is a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. Him staying in Dallas in that role, kind of was already baked in my opinion. So I just see it as a big plus for everyone in Dallas, of course, especially for Dak Prescott. The returning player I want to touch on, though, probably the most, is Rashid Shaheed, a little more under the radar. He signed a 3-year deal worth $51 million, 35 of that being guaranteed. I love this for Seattle. It was a great acquisition at the deadline and a great price for a player who does a little bit of everything for your team. He returns kicks and stuff, returns punts. We just never also got to see Shaheed have a consistent role in this team after being acquired at the trade deadline, at least as a receiver. I imagine he operates as the number 2 behind JSN, considering they don't take a wide receiver in the first round. I'm not concerned about Cooper Kupp at all. If they don't take a wide receiver, but this also pretty much kills Torrey Horton, who kind of a lot of people had a lot of hope for him. But I think if we were going to see anything from him, probably going to be in 2027 or 2028, maybe not even ever because of Rashid Shaheed kind of blocking him there. A sleeper I like, but with Seattle being pretty run heavy and JSN getting most of the volume, I don't see anyone else being viable outside of Rashid Shaheed and JSN, at least at receiver. So if you kept Shaheed, you got to like this. He's an underrated wide receiver who is going to probably have a much bigger role in this offense. It's going to be a new scheme, and I believe he operates as the number 2, especially with the money he was given. The tight ends that re-sign with their teams aren't exactly the most exciting outside of Kyle Pitts. He was franchise tagged by the Falcons at the beginning of the offseason and will be paid handsomely in 2025 because of it. We shall see if he gets a long-term extension done in Atlanta. I don't exactly know or have an update on that, what exactly is going on there. We just may see a rinse and repeat of what happened this past offseason. He may get franchise tagged again next season, or they just let him walk. Kind of remains to be seen. Either way, I think you can feel good about Pitts going into this year. He's still my tight end 8 and will stay there until further notice. Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce, and Kate Otten are the next guys I'm going to talk about. Goddard signed a 1-year deal worth $7 million. I'm a little shocked it wasn't a bigger deal. I think he's a really, really good player. He will be at the Eagles at least for one more season, though, and his role has a chance to grow also if A.J. Brown is dealt in the next couple of months. A strong tight end hold for now. Travis Kelce is coming back for his age 36 season. My assumption is that this is probably his last year, and I actually don't mind Kelce as a super dirt cheap option if you want reliable points at the tight end position. You can probably expect him to have 70 to 80 catches and around 700 to 800 yards receiving. He will mix in a couple of touchdowns, but the upside is limited at this point in his career, as we all know. Mahomes also may not be the start of the first couple of games due to an ACL tear, of course, that he sustained at the end of last year. I think he's as a sneaky buy, though, because of the looming questions about Rashee Rice. He is in a little bit of a legal trouble once again, and I'm not sure how serious the NFL will punish him. This could range anywhere from him missing all the 2026 season to being suspended, half the season, to him not being suspended at all. We just kind of don't know at this point, so I think we're going to talk about that more as the offseason goes along. If he is suspended, though, for a larger length amount of time, I think Kelce is a candidate for those underneath short yardage targets that, Rashee Rice frequently gets in the offense. Kate Otten is the one that I'm probably going to sum up pretty quick. He got a 3-year deal worth $30 million. I know some people may like this, especially with Mike Evans departing, but I truly don't think it matters. Let me explain why. Otten was only ever productive when 2 or more of the Tampa Bay wide receivers have been injured in the past. Igbuka is there. Godwin plus McMillan will be healthy to start the season. Otten is a clear 4th to 5th option, depending on if you include Bucky Irving or the new Kenneth Gainwell, in that pecking order now. Trade him if you can, or move off of him for a tight end that is going to get more opportunity. He's going to be higher in the pecking order. Just not interested, despite the heftier contract that he actually did get. The last thing I got here is some smaller, under-the-radar moves that were made in free agency. Geno Smith was traded to the Jets, and I think he is likely the favorite to start the year at quarterback at the moment. He likely isn't out there on waivers, but if he is, go grab him. He could have like Jacoby Brissett-like production this next season, and you can slot him into your flex or super flex at some portions, some weeks. Kenneth Gainwell signed with the Buccaneers, replacing Rashad White's role as someone who will mix in on third downs and have a receiving role. Not sure how much he takes away from Bucky. That is something we'll probably dive deeper into later in the offseason. But a handcuff that could matter if something were to happen to Bucky during the season. Same thing goes with Rico Dowdle. He's just going to a much worse offense in Pittsburgh, likely going to get an early down role. Actually got pretty decent money, but I think Jaylen Warren plays the role of the change of pace back, which I think is more important in an offense like this. Keaton Mitchell surprisingly signed with the Chargers, $5 million guaranteed is something that I think a lot of people might overlook. I believe it was 2 years, $9 million, similar to the Najee Harris contract. I think it mixes into the backfield more than people think, especially with Mike McDaniel running the show. Very intriguing, especially as a handcuff to a Marion Hampton. Chris Rodriguez signs with the Jaguars, reunites with Liam Cohen, who was his OC in college when he was at Kentucky. Will have an early down role there and will be, used on some short yardage downs, maybe at the goal line. Interesting handcuff as well. Emmanuel Wilson signs with the Seahawks, and Isaiah Pacheco moves over to Detroit to back up Jahmyr Gibbs. Wilson is a much more interesting guy with the lack of a true guy in the backfield until Zach Charbonnet returns. I believe George Halon is the other guy there, so could be a 50-50 for a couple of games until Charbonnet gets back. You never actually know if what they're going to do in the draft. So I just don't really think that, there's too much there, but you never know. So it's worth a pickup in my opinion. Isaiah Pacheco, though, feels like a nothing burger. He signed for almost no money. I believe he signed for the minimum, and he's not going to have a big role unless there will be multiple injuries that occur in this Detroit backfield. I just don't think there's a lot there. Jahan Dotson and Darnell Mooney both signed relatively interesting deals. Dotson goes to the Falcons and Mooney goes to the Giants. A decent throw-in, especially if you're in a best ball league. They could have 1 or 2 weeks that, they make your lineup. Lastly, we have some quarterback movers. Tua signed with the Falcons on a minimum deal. He has a real chance to start, in my opinion, and he can be a great, great throw-in. Could be a guy that you start maybe half the season. A lot of people are overlooking this. I think it's a 50-50 between him and Penix. Penix is coming off the torn ACL at the moment. And in terms of the number of starts that are made between the two of them, I think that they could maybe, start half and half. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Tua just looks better and is the starting quarterback there in 2026. Gardner Minshew signs with the Cardinals. Same thing here, but with a little less confidence and a much worse offense. Everybody is assuming Brissett is a starter, which he might be, but I think Minshew makes some starts if the Cardinals don't take a quarterback in the draft. So that is going to be all for this video. Tons of fun signings and moves that really changed how we look at these players in 2026, but also how we are going to project some of these offenses going forward. We didn't even get a chance to go over some of the big trades that were made. I am thinking of doing a separate video on that, but I think if anything, we're probably going to be talking a lot about these guys throughout the offseason, a lot of guys that were traded. Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, even David Montgomery, they all found new homes. Anyways, I'm sure we'll be going over those very, very soon, despite if we make a solo video on that or not. Things are about to get even crazier once the NFL draft concludes at the end of April. A lot of super fun videos coming up. I am about to rank the top 10 running backs in the 2026 class and more. Until then, though, you guys take care, and I will see you guys next time.